Okay, thank you very much again for tuning in. And before I start today's topic, let me remind you, please you should subscribe to this channel and click on the bell icon. And if you have any questions regarding anything, please leave your questions or comments in the comment section. If you need any help online, you can once again request the same in the comment section. So we continue with our discussion on pricing, pricing policies and pricing strategies. And within pricing, we were discussing cost-based pricing, and we will continue with cost-based pricing. We have already discussed markup pricing, total cost pricing, and target pricing. And today we are doing the last pricing strategy within cost base. Now there are others which we will do, but in cost base we have to do contribution pricing, but we cannot do contribution pricing unless and until you first understand the significance of contribution for a business through an example. And I have, for this example, I have taken 4 scenarios. Please do keep in mind that in order to understand this, all scenarios are outlandish and all scenarios are they can be called assumed and extreme, but these are very good scenarios and they help us understand the significance of the contribution margin. First and foremost, what is contribution? The formula for contribution is very simple and the concept is also not very difficult to understand. Let's first try and understand the formula. The formula of contribution is sales revenue minus variable cost. Okay, so there are 2 types of costs that we already know about. There is variable cost and there is fixed cost. If you don't know what they are, go back to the video on total cost and variable and fixed cost and you will understand accordingly. But for this video, please do try and understand that contribution is the difference between sales revenue and the variable cost. Contribution is normally reported as, almost always reported as contribution per unit, but here we are going to see its total amount and its significance, and then we will convert it into per unit. So look at the first example. In the first example, the firm is making a revenue of 100,000. Its variable cost, now we are not minusing the total cost. If we minus the total cost, we will straight away reach the net profit. But we are not doing that. What we are doing is, we are dividing the total cost into the 2 components, variable and fixed. 100,000 is the revenue, 40,000 is the variable cost. The difference between the two, 60,000, is the contribution. Now, why is it called contribution? Because this 60,000 will now contribute towards the recovery or the payment of the fixed cost. What is fixed cost? Please keep in mind, fixed costs are those costs which do not change with the level of output. Fixed costs will change. They will change with time, they will change with inflation, they will change with agreements between buyers and sellers. They will change, but they will not change with the level of output. So this is the fixed element. 60,000 is the contribution, 40,000 is the fixed cost. You pay the fixed cost of whatever is left, 20,000, that is your net profit. So in this situation, there is no problem, no decision making involved. If I ask you, I'm making a profit on this product of 40,000, should I continue to make the product? The answer is extremely simple. Yes, continue. Why? Because we're making a profit of 20,000. But the problem arises when you start making losses. When you are manufacturing goods and you're not making profits. Then how do you decide whether you should continue the production process or you should halt it for some period of time? In other words, shut it down for some period of time. The shutdown situation. And wait for things to improve. Let's say that it's incredibly cold right now, alright? And people who are making warm clothes are making a fortune. But when the weather improves a bit, then what should they do? How will they decide whether they should continue production or not? That is not decided by profit and loss. That is decided by the contribution that the production process is making towards the recovery of the fixed cost. Let's look at the second example, and this will make it a bit clear. The sales revenue are 100,000. We are just assuming, for the sake of argument, that the sales revenue remains the same in all our examples. The sales revenue is 100,000. Variable cost has risen for whatever reason, good or bad. It has risen from 40,000 to 80,000. That means that your contribution has gone down from 60,000 to 20,000. So now, instead of 60,000 being available to pay off the fixed cost, now you have only 20,000 available to pay off a cost of 40,000. Okay, so this will 20,000 will be paid towards the recovery of the fixed cost. So what is the situation? 20,000. Now please keep in mind, 40,000 is fixed. That is why it will be the same in all our examples. In all our scenarios, 40,000 is the same. It's fixed. It does not change with the level of output. Variable cost can go up and down, but 40 will remain the same. And we will use the 40,000 to pay part of this. The 20,000 to pay part of the 40,000. 20,000 will still be a loss. Please do keep in mind, the motive of the business is either to maximize the profit. It will lead to profit maximization, assuming here, of course, that profit maximization is the objective. There can be other objectives. But if the objective of the business is to maximize profits, then and if it's not making a profit, then it will take the other side. It will take the other objective. It will try to minimize the loss. Now look what happens. If the business is making a loss of 20,000 here and it stops production here, then what's going to happen? Your contribution will become zero. But let's say if this 40,000 is your rent, you will still have to pay the rent. So in that situation, your loss will be the rent that you pay from your own pocket. The loss will be 40,000. Go towards loss minimization. Okay? So by making the product and by selling the product, you have reduced your loss from 40,000 to 20,000. Okay? So here is the rule. As long as contribution is positive, you should continue to make the product, because some money is available in order to pay off the fixed cost, at least a part of the fixed cost. Even if we reduce the production to zero, fixed cost is fixed. It's not related to the level of output. So if I reduce my output to zero, I still have to pay 40,000. Where will I pay the 40,000 from? From my own pocket. Now that's called a loss. But now that I have made goods and they have given me a contribution of 20,000, this 20,000 at least is available to me to reduce my loss by 20,000, and my loss will be reduced to 20,000 instead of 40,000. Okay. Now look at the third scenario. In the third scenario, the variable cost rises again and becomes equal to 100,000. Now the contribution falls to zero. Whatever revenue I get is offset by the variable cost. I use it to pay off my variable cost. My contribution is zero. So what is my loss then? Equal to the fixed cost. The fixed cost you still have to pay. So this becomes equal to. So now once your contribution is zero, you have reached what is called the shutdown point. Continue production or don't continue production, you will still make a loss of 40,000. Let's say this firm decides not to produce. It shuts down. Then what's going to happen? Sales will be zero, variable cost will be zero, contribution will be zero, but you still have to pay the fixed cost. So this is the shutdown position. You are indifferent. Whether you are making the product, still the loss is 40,000. Whether not making the product, still the loss is 40,000. Any point beyond this, if your variable cost rises in such a way that your contribution becomes negative, you definitely have to shut down production, because now your losses will be maximized. Look at this. Sales minus variable cost now has risen to 110. So your contribution is negative 10,000. Now if you are hiring a direct worker, direct labor, you are going to pay 10,000 from your own pocket. In addition, you have to pay the rent. There is no contribution now towards the recovery of the fixed cost. In fact, there is negative contribution. So your loss, had you closed down production, your loss would have been 40,000 only. Because you have continued production in a situation where variable cost has gone above your revenue, your losses have increased from 40,000 to 50,000. So always the rule is, as long as the contribution is positive, keep producing, because at least you are paying off a part of the fixed cost. But where the contribution becomes zero, that's the shutdown point. Beyond that, you will definitely make losses. Okay, and this same concept is then, but as I already said, contribution is always reported per unit. So let's say you look at this first example. You have a contribution of 60,000. You produced, for assumption's sake, you produced 30,000 units. Your contribution per unit is $2. Always remember, it is reported per unit. This contribution per unit can then become an input into the pricing decision. How do you do that? Let's say your direct cost or your variable cost is $2. Okay, your variable cost is $2. If your variable cost is $2, now the company decides that it will sell its product for $3. It sets a price of $3. Remember, in business, you have the ability to set the price. This is not economics where only demand and supply determine prices. So you set a price of $3, which means you are set on a contribution of $1. Okay, direct cost is basically variable cost. Direct is variable. It's the accounting word for which denotes variable cost. So we will see when we are doing costs, then we will see what direct costs and indirect costs are. That would be a different video. But in this video, please do keep in mind direct cost is variable cost. So $2. I set a price in the market of 3. Sales price per unit 3. Variable cost per unit 2. Contribution margin per unit $1. Now, this is very important in decision making. Let's say my fixed cost is 40,000. Okay, my fixed cost is 40,000. So, how many units do I have to sell? Okay, how many units do I have to sell in order to make a contribution of 40,000 so that I can pay all of my fixed costs? So, I have to sell 40,000 units at a rate of $1, but the rate will be 3. The variable cost will be 2. The contribution, the rate here means the contribution will be $1. Okay, so at this contribution, at this rate I will get a contribution of 40,000. This 40,000 I will pay towards my fixed cost, and I'll pay all my fixed cost. Now, any units that I sell above 40,000 will start giving me a profit. Let's say that I sell 60,000 units. So at 60,000 units, what is my revenue? Multiplied by 3. Okay, minus the cost from it, and you will get the answer of 60,000. So $1 is the contribution. You multiply that $1 with 60,000, and you will get a contribution of 60,000. So 60,000 is your contribution. What is your fixed cost? That does not change with the level of output. 60,000 minus 40,000. Now you've made a profit of 20,000. So as long as, so this is the catch in contribution-based pricing. In contribution-based pricing, you set a price based on an understanding of the contribution, and then any units that you sell over and above those needed to pay off your fixed cost will start giving you a profit. Now this is a very important concept. Why do you think you must have traveled in planes? Sometimes you travel in planes, the planes are half empty or almost empty, but they are still flying. They are not grounding those planes. Why? Because the price that they are charging you are paying for the fixed cost, and at least they are recovering the fixed cost. Imagine the fixed cost that has gone into the airline. Okay, so please keep this example in mind, please keep these scenarios in mind, and please keep in mind that here what the company is doing is that it is setting its price based on the contribution. The price is $3. Why? Because the company has set a contribution for itself at $1. Okay, so thank you very much, and we will continue with our discussion on pricing in the next video where we do competition based pricing. Thank you very much.